Well, hello, everybody. Hello, and welcome to the last episode of You, Me, and Iced Tea for the season. And I'm so glad to see you there. It's going to be so sad without you for some time, but believe me, we will start up again just as soon as we can pull it together in 2024 because we can't stop talking about books and book related topics. We just love it and we can't stop talking about it ever. So I'm sure there's going to be loads more topics to figure out. And while I figure out why my pattern here in my dress keeps fading into the background, you know, I'll introduce the topic for our final talk, and that's going to be editing. Editing part two, because it's such a big topic. It really needed two sessions because a writer does not have much chance of success without a proper editor. I mean, a really great editing job on each and every book that they write. I mean, it's just that simple. I mean, just the process of enjoying a book, enjoying a novel, reading a book, and being suspended into the story, into that world of the imagination, and you're there with the characters, and you're enjoying the story, and then suddenly a spelling error just drops you right out, of that lovely state of suspended, imagination. And it's so annoying, or you find a factual error or a logical error. I mean, it's a very frustrating experience, and I'm sure all of us have been there at one point or another when we've read a novel that we've loved, and we thought to ourselves, now why didn't they just go the extra mile, and get it properly edited, because it would have been such an amazing story, had it been done right. So I'm gonna turn it over to Lene to catch us up on the things that we missed out on last time when Lene pulled a no-show. Sadly, we knew it had to be an emergency though, because Lene does not show up unless it's a terrible emergency. And we hope that your little girl is much better this week.
Yeah, thank you. We had a little situation, so I had to spend my Sunday
Yes.
evening at the doctor's, but all is well now,
Oh,
so thank goodness. But these
bless her
things always
heart.
happen in the most inconvenient of times, right? They do make interesting plot points, but yeah, it's a bit more tricky to try and work your way around those, and especially for panel discussions like this, where I actually went back and watched last week's episode. So if you want to watch this one, I suggest find the previous one so that you can have continuity and watch them in one
Absolutely.
session, because I want to follow on from what was said last week on a few points. So editing happens in multiple stages, and there are multiple types of editing for writers to make sure that their manuscript gets filtered through the different stages and processes. An editor who checks your spelling might not know about sensitivity issues, or might not be aware of your research or plot arcs. They will just look on a line-by-line basis. So let's break down what the editing involves. First, you have your raw manuscript. You may have used AI or not to guide you on grammar, style, plot points, or whatever, but be aware that a lot of online bookseller platforms do not like AI content. Readers do not like it, and you have to now flag it. So if you've used AI tools to help you edit, that is separate from using AI to create the content. There's an important distinction because you cannot copyright AI derivative materials. That's very important. Now, once you've got your raw manuscript, what do you do with this? Do you give it to your cousins, your friends, your neighbors? First, you need to let that manuscript sit for a few weeks to a few months. Let it marinate and soak out of your immediate memory, because while you're in it, you can't see all of the bloopers. When you revisit this manuscript, you will pick up a few problems. You might fix them. You might self-edit while you're writing, like Richard likes to do, or you prefer to perhaps info dump and just do stream of consciousness writing, where everything gets blurted out onto the page, and you can end up with a 300,000 word monster. It will make your editing job a bit more tricky, but if that's your flow, go with it. There are no rules. It's only about saving time and money to get a better product out to your readers. Now, indie authors are competing with published authors who have entire teams of professionals who can do all of this for you. Hybrid publishers are a different species on their own because many of them are predatory and charge you a fortune with no guarantee of return on your investment. So do your
Yes.
research before you just hand over your manuscript to any publisher. And there are blogs, I believe Writer Beware is one of them, that lists known scam and hybrid publishers that do not provide the service that they promise you. So that's your
Excellent
disclaimers done.
suggestion. Please
Yeah,
repeat
yeah.
the website again. What
I
was the
think it's
website?
Writer Beware is a blog, I think.
Okay.
You can Google it, it should show up. Now, once you
Right,
have
that's
your raw
terrific.
manuscript, your first port of call should be a developmental editor who can take a look at the overall story. Are there emotive highs and lows? Do the characters all have good plot arcs? Do you even have the same character name from beginning to end of the story? Because that's known to have happened before. Do you have interesting points of tension? And there are various methods like Save the Cat, the 3-act plot structure. There are so many out there that pick your flavor. There are no hard and fast rules, but Western
Yeah.
publishing has a lot to answer for in training readers to expect a certain pacing of your story.
Mhm.
Exposition, narrative, the hook, the first line, the dreaded blurb. There's a lot involved in trying to stand out amongst the other millions of books that are being published every year. So once you have a developmental editor run through your manuscript and tell you, I think this doesn't work here, this doesn't work, you've got two different kinds of vehicles and you've got a steam-powered engine, but people are flying around in a spaceship. Why and how? And this will resolve a lot of potential issues for readers. Then your next stage, you could have an alpha reader, which are people who are not developmental editors, but they read the rough manuscript as well and give you some feedback that jumps out at them. This can be useful as well and is usually a free
Yes.
service. Developmental editors charge rates according to the various publishing union rates in different countries. And you can find them on places like Fiverr, Upwork, or other sites. Do interview them, find a good fit, and work on your budget. Expecting them to work for free does not pay their bills. So unless you can barter another service like illustrating book covers for them or some other way of bartering, that is becoming more popular as well and is perfectly justifiable. All right, so you can budget for this, but it is an important investment in your product. You have a product now, not just a
Mhm.
story or a piece of your soul. So
Right.
once you have your developmental edit done and you've worked through that, then you go to a line edit. Now, some editors do line and copy editing in one. Others
Mhm.
have separate specialities. Your line editor works on your style and author's voice.
Mhm.
They will catch the flow of your voice. And if you deviate from that, they will point out that this doesn't sound like you. You've set a certain tone, a certain mood, dreamy
Mhm.
narrative, or fast paced action, and then an entire chapter or section might need to be rewritten to comply with the rest of your voice. They look
Right.
after your voice and this little bit of your soul. The
Right.
next editor would be a copy editor. They do
Mhm.
grammar, syntax, spelling errors, spacing. They could work with a bit of formatting issues as well. And
Mhm.
here's where there's an important aspect to remember. In America, a lot of them follow the Chicago style manual. There are different style guides for publishing houses. There are different style guides for different countries. And the indie author is free to choose any style they like as long as they are consistent. While
Mhm.
people prefer to say, this is the rule, you have to follow it, no, you don't. Unless
Right.
you are trying to get an agent and a traditional publisher, you can write whatever style you like. I'm
Right.
reminded of who's it, E.E. Cummings, I think, who didn't use any punctuation. So whatever rule you break it with panache and with style, and stick to it. But have your reasons ready because there will be people who come for you saying, why did you do this? That's personal preference.
Right.
Readers may also not like books without styles that they're familiar with because they've become accustomed to pacing, flow, and grammar replaces the audiobooks, pauses, and inflections on words and dramatic moments of tension. You will not use a narrative voice like David Attenborough to discuss a scene in which there's a high-speed chase. You will do the
Right.
bucolic natural observance, the quiet, looking at nature and almost dry, humorous way of telling a dramatic scene. So
Mhm.
make sure that your grammar reflects something that your audio narrator can actually read. Long-winded sentences, for example, a lot of telling instead of showing. There are various style guides that you can follow, but mix it up. People like interesting books. And then I don't want to talk too much. So I'm going to say that the author's voice depends on whether English is your first language or a second or tertiary language. For
Mhm.
indie authors, we have a huge pool of international writers who want to tell their story in English, and you have to make allowances for the fact that their style choices might not be what you're accustomed to. So broaden your horizons, open up your mind to new experiences, and don't let the style impact your opinion of a story, but just enjoy the immersive experience for what it is. And lastly, after your beta readers, which can be in between line and copy editing, before or after or during, there can be many rounds. You have ARC readers who are advanced reader copy readers. That's when you've published the first round of hard printed books and handed them out to certain people, hopefully people with influence or established reputations, so that they can give you written reviews that you can use to advertise the book during the launch. And that is usually also a free service. I see some people charging for it, and there's been some controversy about that. But
Yeah.
these are the basic steps to make sure that your story from your soul becomes a marketable product that will hopefully earn you a decent income on your investment.
Right, right. So, I mean, that's a wealth of information that you've just given us there. So thank you for that. Number one, I
So,
mean, it's just this is the kind of thing that we as indie authors really need to know. And those of us who've been through it, we need to be refreshed. It did sound like an awful lot of steps though. So, I mean, is there, I mean, are there editors that can do I mean, all of that editing, as one person. I mean, it sounds like a lot of people, doing so many things.
yeah,
What do you think?
the whole point of having multiple eyes on your story is to prevent stupid errors from creeping in, because as a developmental editor I might reread a manuscript 50 times or more, going back and forth to certain passages,
Mm,
finding a plot thread that annoyed me, or I remember as being, hang on, wasn't this different? So
mm,
for me to focus on the grammar and style as well as the plot points and the spelling,
mhm,
when the dev editor stage might require a few rewrites. So the spelling is irrelevant because it's going to be deleted or rewritten anyway, and that saves time and money. So if you
right.
want to combine line and copy editing, there are editors who do that, but it
Mhm,
increases the chance of mistakes slipping through. And so it's a choice that the author has to make depending on budget as well. And again, the bartering.
right.
Um, but the more people who look at it, the more chance you have of eliminating stupid little errors, and giving a much more polished product, which in the
Right.
end of the day, it has to become a product.
True. I mean, of course, we have to look at sometimes really small budgets though as well,
Mm-hmm.
especially, in indie authors. I mean, Richard, you may have something to say about that. How do you deal with having that many, editing runs on an indie author's budget?
Um, I have three paid for edits with every book. The first one, as Lene says, is developmental. I don't care about the spelling or grammar at that point. All I care about is if the plot makes sense. If people aren't traveling vast distances in 3 seconds, or aren't saying things that are obviously wrong, or if the general setting doesn't sort of line up with reality. So I get that done. Then I'll rewrite and produce an alpha or beta copy, whatever you want to call it, and I'll send that
Hmm.
out to about 20 different people, and they will in various different ways, entirely up to them. They'll spot typos, they'll spot more plot points, and they'll let me know. Some of them write pages and pages of notes, some of them just a few paragraphs. It's all appreciated. It's the whole idea of getting as many eyes on the manuscript as you possibly can.
Yeah.
So when I've got all that information back, I'll then rewrite, and I'll then send the what I think is completed manuscript for a line and copy edit combined at the same time. Basically, and then they will ignore the plot completely. They will just focus on the spelling and grammar. Because at that point,
So
I
is
think
that the same person, the line and
it's the same person. Yeah.
okay,
I've been using them for 10 years now. They've done everything that I've written just about. I trust them
okay.
completely. They like my style. I interviewed them out of 3 or 4 at the start to find one that was a good fit, and I was impressed by the way they dealt with the whole process. So I've stayed with them. And the greatest accolade I get now is I do get reviews from my books that say things like, unusually for an indie book, there were no spelling mistakes. And I
That's
think, well, you know,
amazing.
I've
That's
got a great
actually,
editor
yeah.
there, and as I said last time, I just have to make sure that they don't retire before I do.
Yeah, that's awesome. So, I mean, that's all right. Sounds like you've got it down to a well-oiled machine
I think
there.
so.
So
Yeah, it's
that's
taken a
good.
while.
I think I need to get to your level, actually. I'm working on it. I'm
Oh
working
yeah,
on it.
it's
I
one of
am.
those things that's never finished. You can always do it better next time, but this time has to be good. But you can always do it better.
Exactly. I am, that's true. I'm striving to be better with each
Yeah.
book. I mean, to
I
improve,
think that
improve, improve.
Lene can
So,
probably correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the traditional industry standard is 1 error per 10,000 words on a completed product.
oh, well, I
Um,
mean, you know,
It's actually gotten worse with a lot more complaints now because they're just pushing
okay.
out books. The
Yeah.
indies industry has actually irritated the traditional publishing industry because now there's competition, and
Mm.
I've seen atrocious work published by
Oh yes.
traditional publishing houses, and I'm shocked
oh,
that they actually let that through.
Yeah.
wow.
As I said, that, years ago I was told that traditional would accept 1 error per 10,000 words. So if you had 3 or 4 errors in your complete book, you were well within industry tolerance, shall we say. But yes,
Excellent.
I've read some traditionally published book that I would be embarrassed to put out myself.
That's really
Just a word about
interesting.
AI editing tools, though. I forgot to add.
Right.
Please
Please tell us how to use that. I mean,
Well,
what would be
I would
recommendations?
avoid them for now. The current feedback is that they are elementary school level in terms of editing, and they are
What?
not sophisticated enough. So they tend to dumb down your writing if you have a more intellectual style of writing. The second
Oh.
problem is your terms and conditions make very sure that you read every fine print because most of them demand in return that your manuscript is now used to train their AI, and you have now splintered or fragmented your copyright.
Ah, that's,
Yes.
see, that's a great warning there to put out. So thank you. Authors, anyone who's watching this, listening to this, please beware. You don't want to spend a year, 2 years, or whatever, working on a book, and as part of your heart, as part of your soul, and then suddenly an AI owns it partially. No, come on. Nah, that just can't happen. So be careful and read that fine print. Please do me a favor. So, what do you think about all this, Mr. B? What was your editing experience like?
Um, I'm not skilled at that, and so I actually pay for things that I cannot do. I prefer that method. But while listening, I realized that what I actually pay for or what goes behind the scenes of what I pay for. And so it makes me feel a little more satisfied and a little satisfied in that there's work going into it that I didn't think of or didn't realize, like Richard said or Lene said. And so when someone is sending something to an editor, they should not feel like, oh my gosh, they're stealing my revenue from a book generation up front because I have to pay them. Well, yeah, we have to pay to play. If we don't know how to play, then we should pay. Right? and have
Right.
someone do the work from an expertise level that you wouldn't do yourself, which will totally benefit you in the long run if you're a for-profit indie author trying to generate revenue over the case of time. And in my case, I wanted to get my message out, and so I don't want my message to be distracted when I was doing the nuggets of giving back. I didn't want someone to
Yeah.
feedback a review saying all of your words are misplaced or your editing is poor. I really tried to get for that first book a good quality book that someone could hold, that they can appreciate the texture and the cover, the nature of the words, the font inside, the spacing, all of those things, the white space for reading. I wanted it to be comfortable for someone to appreciate what it is. We even put lines at the end of those the sections that had the nuggets of information, asking, what do you think? Allowing people, please write in your book, your own thoughts about what you can think about giving back, and left
Yeah.
lines for them. And so it's nice to have something done properly.
Right. Well, true. I mean, it's like I said before, it's like the insurance, I mean, you have to kind of put that investment into what you have built yourself. And I think someone who tries to edit their own book, and I have learned this the hard way too, is that it's like a doctor trying to be his own patient or her own patient. You're going to be very biased, and that what words are supposed to be there, so your eyes are not going to be trustworthy going over your own words, whereas someone else's eyes are going to be fresh and looking, for anything there, any mistakes there.
and
So it's
and for spotting the missing information, because the author
exactly.
has the story in their mind and
Sure.
they might have forgotten to put it into words. So your
That's
beta
right.
readers and dev editor are important at telling you, I was under the impression this was a six-legged heffalump running around in a green field, and now you're changing it to so and so, but you never specified, or they have gaps in the plot where your brain likes to fill in the gaps for you because you already know the story. You have expectations of what comes
You have the
next. So
curse of
we also
knowledge.
look at what's not there. And important as well for people writing trilogies or sequels or multiple books in a series, your editor has to read all the previous material to make sure that it's consistent. It's a lot of
Right.
work. We
Yes.
cannot continue on a developmental arc without having read all the previous material to make sure that you have not left any dangling plot threads that would tie in beautifully with a sequel or book 3 that have been foreshadowed. So it becomes a very technical juggling act sometimes. And editing, of course, for non-fiction works like Mr. B's amazing self-help book are highly specialized as well. And if you need to look for an editor in a specific genre, there are Discord groups, there are Facebook groups, there are forums, there are websites where you can look for the specific niche that will fit your voice and style and preserve your message.
Right. Now, all right, what advice would you give to indie authors that are working with, I mean, of course, there's all different kinds of budgets. I mean, let's just face it. And I think that,
Yep.
we shouldn't, I mean, one should not be prevented from putting a book out into the world because they have a very low budget. I mean, it wouldn't be fair. I mean, there's always going to be somebody who's got plenty of money and they can just throw money, at it and hire,
Oh,
the best that
the,
money can buy, and editing. But
yeah, the
that
people with the money tend to be egotistical and insist on having their finished product their way, which the editor then eventually leaves in disgust because none of the advice was followed. Not that I'm mentioning any specific examples, but for people who
I
don't
didn't think
have a
of it that
budget,
way.
well, yeah, the ego and money thing, right? Ego and money come with expectations and certain personality types, and you have to work with those creative divas, if you will. They can be men too, just note. For the writer who has no budget, are you a 19-year-old or a 16-year-old, or are you a 55-year-old?
Right.
If you are very young, take your time, develop that book, because I can guarantee you those next 10 years of your life will change your maturity and emotional perspective so much that you are going to want to change that book. Many people cringe when they read their first published works when they were teenagers or early young adults. So Rather take the time and save the money and make a plan. Borrow
Mhm.
money, take a loan, whatever you need to do. But if you put that book out with a low budget, very light editing touch, it is not going to be a good product, and it can affect your reputation for any following work. Invest in future you at the correct pace. Pacing yourself as a product manufacturer is important as well. If you are an older writer who now wants to write their first book or have written a few books and don't have money, you have other skills to barter. You have other ways of raising cash. There are payment systems. Some editors will take a payment in 3 to 6 different portions over different months. Some of them may expect you to pay first, and once you've reached the payment threshold, then they start editing your work. So it is highly flexible out there. And do take a look at editors in other countries that have a weaker currency than yours, because you can buy more of their time and expertise for the same dollar amount
That's a
that
good tip.
in your country, for example, might only get you a third-rate editor. Now, an important thing about editor qualifications and affiliations and memberships. Some countries like the US expect you to join unions, affiliations, organizations, and have done certain courses before you can call yourself an editor. I've heard complaints of editors who have done all of that and are still not good editors. So that is not a guarantee.
Right.
On the other hand, you have editors like myself. I've been doing it for 30 years. No, I don't have an editorial training or qualification. I don't need one. I'm not going to pay someone to get one just to impress someone with a credential, because I can't make that money back. Some of these credentials cost a fortune, and it's just not worth it for me. So don't stare blindly at a bunch of abbreviations after someone's name. Interview them, get a sample, try for reviews about their work, and go with your gut instinct. Some people will love bomb you in the beginning to get you to hire them, and then they don't provide. That has unfortunately been the case with an editor that was busted last year on TikTok, who outsourced to editors in other countries who produced low quality work, and she just took the money. Yeah, I forget her name, but everyone blocked her on social media. It was quite the scandal. But people are there to exploit you at every phase of development. So try and find the good ones and then support them, because in turn they will support you and make your work shine.
I think it is important, right, to develop a relationship with one or two people that you've sort of, networked with, like Richard has done. He also gave us a very good advice about auditioning, for an editing job. I'd never thought of that before, sending out maybe your first chapter, to a few editors and say, I'm auditioning for an editor, for my book, and I want to see what you will do. I love that idea.
It is an interesting concept, and I've stopped doing that, because if you have 30 people expecting you to work for free, you have no time to do your paid clients' work. And it's effort gone to waste, because they then inevitably either find a cheaper editor, or will maybe just take that chapter and keep sending different chapters to different editors to get all of them done free, and the whole book is a mess. Yeah, we've seen some situations like that.
Maybe, good idea. None of us ever thought of that. You're the only one who thought of that. Curious.
Well, yeah.
So before you close out for a new year, because we're almost wrapping up, I'm curious, Richard and Dedra, what would you like your listeners to read, the first one of your books you would like them to read in 2024 that's going to give them the best start for the new year?
Well, for me, it's The Buchanan Bastard. You see the cover right behind. Whoop. Yeah, there. Right behind me, there next to the glass of iced tea, The Buchanan Bastard. And interestingly enough, it is on sale now on Amazon.com. So you might want to go ahead and grab it now. And it's on sale as an ebook on Smashwords.com. It's a great chance to grab it for half price. So it's brilliant. It's the best book that I've written so far. And it has been edited by Lene, so she's also quite proud of that book. It's kind of a calling card for her, if you will. So yeah, I mean, please enjoy it. It's a crime drama set in New Orleans, 1970s during Mardi Gras. A lot of flavor there. What about you, Richard?
Um, a book I wrote a couple of years ago called We Are Saul, which
That's a
is a
good
medical
one.
mystery with a sci-fi twist.
I read that.
And I thoroughly enjoyed it. It was a slightly new departure for me. No spaceships, well, not many spaceships, and very few alien planets. But I think it's quite a good tale with a moral, and I enjoyed writing it, and people seem to have enjoyed reading it.
It's fantastic. It is a great plot. I mean, it starts off, you're just so sad for this poor guy, but then his life just changes
Yeah.
so dramatically. I'm not going to say anything because I don't want to spoil the plot, but it's good. Yeah. Richard and I read each other's books, so that's very important. Author supporting authors is incredibly important. And this is sadly it brings us to the end here for this episode and to for the year of 2023. And I guess did all of you get a drink? Yeah. We got a drink? Yes. Okay.
I know I read that.
Yes.
Happy New Year.
Happy New
Happy New
Year.
Year,
Can you see
everybody.
mine? Happy New Year. And may all your wishes come true for 2024. Don't forget to make great resolutions, write a book, hire a good editor, and don't forget to listen to our next season of You, Me, and Iced Tea. Ciao, guys.